New Year's Eve celebration. Jason's words cut deeper than any knife could. Don't come to New Year's Eve. My fiancée is a corporate lawyer at Sullivan and Cromwell. She can't know about your situation. Within minutes, Mom called to confirm their decision. Dad's voice echoed in the background, agreeing that my presence would be inappropriate for such an important occasion. My heart shattered as I realized my own family considered me an embarrassment, a liability they needed to hide from Amanda's prestigious legal world. I typed back with trembling fingers, "Understood." What they didn't know was that January 3rd would change everything forever. I stared at my phone screen for what felt like hours, reading Jason's message over and over again. Each word burned itself into my memory, creating wounds that would take months to heal. My brother, the golden child who'd graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Law School, couldn't bear the thought of his successful fiancée discovering that his sister wasn't living up to the family's expectations of conventional success. The past 3 years had been a whirlwind of struggle and determination. After graduating from MIT with my computer science degree, I'd made the decision that horrified my entire family. Instead of accepting a stable position at Google or Microsoft, I chose to start my own cybersecurity consulting business. My parents, Dorothy and Frank, had spent countless dinner conversations expressing their disappointment in what they called my reckless abandonment of security. My studio apartment in Cambridge became both my home and office, where I worked 16-hour days building something I believed could revolutionize how companies protected their digital assets. The cramped space barely fit my desk computer equipment and a fold-out couch that served as my bed most nights. My bank account rarely held more than $300, and I survived on instant ramen and peanut butter sandwiches while pouring every earned dollar back into developing my technology platform. Jason, meanwhile, had climbed the ladder at Henderson Barrett and Associates with impressive speed. His corner office overlooked Boston Harbor, and his salary afforded him a luxury condo in Back Bay that our parents visited every weekend. When he started dating Amanda Wellington 6 months ago, the family dynamics shifted dramatically in ways I hadn't fully understood until this moment. Amanda was everything our parents admired: polished, articulate, and professionally accomplished. She carried herself with the confidence that came from graduating Yale Law School and securing a position at one of the most prestigious law firms in the country. Her designer suits probably cost more than my monthly rent, and she spoke about her cases with the authority of someone who'd never questioned her place in the world. During family gatherings, Amanda would ask about my work with what seemed like genuine interest, but her questions always carried subtle undertones of skepticism. She'd tilt her head slightly when I explained my cybersecurity platform, her expression suggesting she found my enthusiasm charmingly naive. When I mentioned potential clients or breakthrough moments in my development process, she'd respond with comments like, "That sounds challenging," or "I hope it works out for you," delivered with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. My parents began adopting Amanda's perspective without realizing it. They'd ask fewer questions about my progress and more about when I planned to settle down with a traditional career. Mom started mentioning job openings at local corporations with increasing frequency, while Dad would share articles about the benefits of steady employment and retirement planning. Their concern came from love, but it felt like constant pressure to abandon everything I'd worked toward. The breaking point came 3 weeks before Christmas, when I accidentally overheard a phone conversation between Jason and Amanda while visiting their condo. I'd stepped onto the balcony for fresh air when Amanda's voice drifted through the sliding door she'd left slightly open. "Your sister's situation is becoming problematic," Amanda was saying, her tone sharp and businesslike. "I've been researching her online presence, and there's virtually nothing substantial to show for 3 years of work. My colleagues at Sullivan and Cromwell expect their partners' families to demonstrate stability and success. Having a sibling who's essentially failed at entrepreneurship could reflect poorly on your partnership prospects." Jason's response made my stomach drop. I know she means well, but Mildred has always been stubborn about practical advice. Maybe it's time for some tough love to help her see reality. Amanda continued, I've seen this pattern before with clients' family members who refuse to acknowledge when their ventures aren't viable. The kindest thing would be encouraging her to pivot towards something more sustainable before she wastes additional years chasing impossible dreams. I stood frozen on that balcony watching the harbor lights twinkle, while my own family discussed my life as if I were a problem requiring management. The conversation continued for another 10 minutes with Amanda, detailing how unsuccessful relatives had affected other attorneys' careers, and Jason agreeing that they needed to help me make better decisions about my future. That night, I drove back to my apartment with a new understanding of my place in the family hierarchy. I wasn't just the struggling entrepreneur anymore. I'd become the embarrassing secret that threatened my brother's professional advancement. The realization stung worse than any financial hardship or technical setback I'd faced while building my company. Now holding Jason's New Year's Eve rejection, I understood the full scope of Amanda's influence on my family's perception. She hadn't just dismissed my work, she'd convinced them that my very presence could damage Jason's career prospects. The woman my family welcomed with such enthusiasm had been systematically undermining my relationship with them while positioning herself as the voice of reason and practical wisdom. I set my phone down and walked to my desk where months of work waited in neat stacks of documentation and code printouts. My reflection in the dark window showed a woman who'd aged beyond her 28 years, worn down by constant financial pressure and family disapproval. But beneath the exhaustion, I recognized something else, a determination that had carried me through every challenge of the past 3 years. Tomorrow was December 31st, and while my family celebrated with champagne and Amanda's sophisticated conversation, I would spend the evening preparing for the most important meeting of my professional life. They could exclude me from their celebration, but they couldn't stop what I'd built from changing everything they thought they knew about success and failure. While my family saw only struggle and instability, I'd been quietly building something extraordinary that would soon transform not just my life, but the entire cybersecurity industry. Data Secure Solutions had evolved far beyond my initial consulting services into a revolutionary platform that could predict and prevent cyber attacks before they occurred, using artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms I'd developed during countless sleepless nights in my cramped apartment. The breakthrough came in September when I successfully prevented a major ransomware attack on a mid-sized Boston healthcare network. My system detected the intrusion patterns 12 hours before traditional security measures would have identified the threat, saving the hospital millions in potential damages and protecting thousands of patient records. Word spread quickly through cybersecurity circles, and suddenly my phone was ringing with inquiries from companies across New England. By November, I'd moved my operations into a modest office space in Kendall Square, where the walls were lined with whiteboards covered in complex algorithms and system diagrams. My team had grown to include Sarah Chen, a brilliant database architect who'd left her position at IBM to join my venture, and Marcus Rodriguez, a former NSA analyst who brought expertise in government-level security protocols. Together, we'd created something that major corporations desperately needed, but couldn't find anywhere else in the market. The real validation came on December 15th when my phone rang at 6:30 in the morning. The caller introduced himself as Harrison Phillips' managing partner and chief technology officer at Whitmore Industries, one of America's largest pharmaceutical research companies. Their headquarters in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, employed over 40,000 people and generated annual revenues exceeding $15 billion. Miss Mildred. Harrison's voice carried the weight of someone accustomed to making decisions worth millions. We've been following your work with considerable interest. Last month's presentation at the Boston Cybersecurity Conference demonstrated exactly the kind of innovative thinking our industry requires. My heart raced as he continued. Whitmore suffered a devastating data breach in August that cost us $47 million in damages and regulatory fines. We've evaluated every major cybersecurity firm in the country, but none offer the predictive capabilities your platform provides. We'd like to discuss an exclusive partnership that could revolutionize how pharmaceutical companies protect their research data. 3 days later, I found myself in Whitmore's executive boardroom, presenting DataSecure's capabilities to a panel of senior vice presidents, legal counsel, and technology directors. The room overlooked acres of research facilities where scientists develop medications that would save countless lives, and I understood that protecting their work meant protecting humanity's future health and wellness. Harrison explained their requirements with precision that reminded me why Whitmore had remained industry leaders for over 6 decades. We need a system that can protect not just our current data, but also predict and prevent attacks on our research partners, regulatory submissions, and clinical trial networks. Our work often involves collaborations with universities, government agencies, and international research institutions, each with their own security vulnerabilities that could compromise our shared projects. My presentation lasted 2 hours, during which I demonstrated how DataSecure could create an interconnected security web that protected entire networks of collaborating organizations. The technology I developed could identify suspicious patterns across multiple systems, simultaneously providing early warning capabilities that traditional security measures simply couldn't match. The questions that followed were intense and detailed. Dr. Patricia Hoffman, Whitmore's Chief Information Officer, challenged every aspect of my algorithm's methodology. Legal counsel Benjamin Walsh grilled me about compliance with federal regulations governing pharmaceutical research data. Finance Director Robert Kim wanted detailed projections about implementation costs and projected savings from prevented breaches. I answered each question with confidence built from 3 years of obsessive preparation. Every late night spent refining my code, every rejected proposal that had taught me to anticipate objections, every moment of doubt that had pushed me to work harder, had prepared me for this conversation. At the end of the presentation, Harrison leaned back in his leather chair and smiled for the first time since I'd entered the room. "Miss Mildred, your platform represents exactly the technological advancement our industry needs. We're prepared to offer DataSecure an exclusive 5-year contract to serve as Whitmore's primary cybersecurity partner, with options for additional 5-year renewals based on performance metrics." The numbers that followed made my head spin. $12 million over 5 years with performance bonuses that could increase the total to $18 million if DataSecure achieved specific security benchmarks. Additional consulting fees for training their staff and implementing the system across their global operations. Stock options in Whitmore that would mature as our partnership demonstrated measurable results. But Harrison wasn't finished. "There's one additional component we need to discuss. Whitmore's primary legal counsel is Sullivan & Cromwell in New York. They handle our regulatory compliance patent filings and corporate litigation. Any cybersecurity system we implement must integrate seamlessly with their document management and communication systems. We'll need you to personally oversee that integration process." My breath caught as he mentioned Sullivan & Cromwell, though I didn't immediately connect it to Amanda's workplace. The firm represented dozens of Fortune 500 companies, and I'd assumed Amanda worked on different types of cases than those involving technology partnerships. "We've scheduled a comprehensive integration planning meeting for January 3rd. Harrison continued, "where you'll present DataSecure's capabilities to Sullivan & Cromwell's senior partners and technology staff. Their approval is essential for moving forward with full implementation, since they'll be handling all legal aspects of our data protection protocols." I accepted the contract terms immediately, though my hands shook as I signed the documents that would transform DataSecure from a struggling startup into a major player in corporate cybersecurity. The signing bonus alone was more money than I'd ever seen in my bank account, and the ongoing revenue would allow me to expand my team and develop even more advanced protective technologies. As I drove back to Boston that evening, my phone buzzed with text messages from Sarah and Marcus, celebrating the news I'd shared with them from the parking lot. But I couldn't call my family to share the most important achievement of my professional life because they'd made it clear that my success embarrassed them. I spent the next week preparing for the Sullivan and Cromwell integration meeting with obsessive attention to detail. Every PowerPoint slide was designed to demonstrate not just DataSecure's technical capabilities, but also the strategic value we could provide to their highest priority clients. I researched the firm's history, their major cases, and their reputation for demanding excellence from every vendor and partner. December 31st arrived with crystal clear skies and temperatures that dropped to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. While my family prepared for their celebration with Amanda, I worked until midnight in my office finalizing the presentation that would introduce DataSecure to one of the most prestigious law firms in America. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Amanda had convinced my family that I was an embarrassment to be hidden, I was about to walk into her workplace as the CEO of her firm's most important client's technology partner. But I still didn't know she worked there, so I prepared for January 3rd simply as the most crucial professional presentation of my career. As midnight struck and fireworks exploded over Boston Harbor, I made a resolution that had nothing to do with personal improvement or lifestyle changes. I resolved to show the world exactly what Mildred could accomplish when she refused to let other people's limitations define her possibilities. January 3rd dawned crisp and clear with temperatures hovering around 22 degrees Fahrenheit and a sharp wind cutting through Manhattan's concrete canyons. I'd arrived in New York the previous evening, staying at the Parker Meridian on West 57th Street and spending hours rehearsing my presentation in front of the hotel room's floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Central Park's snow-covered landscape. Sullivan and Cromwell's offices occupied floors 28 through 45 of a gleaming glass tower that commanded spectacular views of the Hudson River. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor felt endless. My reflection multiplied in the polished steel walls as I ascended toward what I knew would be the most important 90 minutes of my professional career. The reception area spoke of quiet power and understated elegance. Persian rugs covered polished hardwood floors, and original oil paintings depicted scenes of American legal history. The receptionist, a poised woman with silver hair and a crisp navy suit, greeted me with professional warmth and directed me toward Conference Room A, where the integration planning meeting would take place. I entered the boardroom 15 minutes early, giving myself time to set up my laptop and test the projection system. The space was magnificent, a mahogany table that could seat 20 people surrounded by leather chairs that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Windows stretched from floor to ceiling, offering panoramic views of the city that never slept. Harrison Phillips arrived precisely on time, accompanied by Dr. Hoffman and two other Whitmore executives I hadn't met during my North Carolina presentation. His handshake conveyed confidence and satisfaction with the decision to partner with DataSecure, and his introduction to the Sullivan and Cromwell team demonstrated the respect both organizations commanded in their respective industries. Charles Morrison, the managing partner leading Sullivan and Cromwell's corporate technology practice, was a distinguished man in his early 60s, whose silver beard and sharp eyes suggested decades of experience negotiating complex deals. He was joined by Jennifer Walsh, the firm's chief information officer, and three other senior associates whose expertise would be crucial for successfully integrating DataSecure's platform with their existing systems. Ladies and gentlemen, Harrison began his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms filled with influential decision-makers. I'm pleased to introduce Mildred, Chief Executive Officer of DataSecure Solutions and the architect of the cybersecurity platform that will revolutionize how Whitmore protects its intellectual property and research data. I stood at the head of the table wearing a charcoal gray suit I'd purchased specifically for this presentation, feeling the weight of everyone's attention as I prepared to demonstrate 3 years of relentless work and innovation. My voice remained steady as I began explaining DataSecure's predictive algorithms and their potential applications for protecting sensitive legal documents and client communications. 20 minutes into my presentation, the boardroom door opened quietly. I continued speaking while a latecomer entered, assuming it was another associate joining the meeting. but when I glanced toward the door during my explanation of data encryption protocols, my words caught in my throat. Amanda Wellington stood frozen in the doorway, her face draining of color as recognition dawned. She was holding a stack of files that suddenly seemed forgotten in her hands, her mouth opening slightly as she processed the impossible scene unfolding before her eyes. The woman she'd dismissed as an embarrassing failure was standing at the head of Sullivan and Cromwell's most prestigious conference room, commanding the attention of senior partners and their most important client. For a moment that felt like eternity, neither of us moved. Amanda's files slipped from her trembling hands, scattering across the polished hardwood floor with sounds that seemed deafeningly loud in the quiet boardroom. Papers covered in legal text and official letterhead spread around her feet while she stared at me with an expression of pure shock and disbelief. Then Amanda began screaming. "This is impossible." Her voice cracked with hysteria as every head in the room turned toward her. "She's nobody. She can't even afford rent on a decent apartment. She lives on instant ramen and sleeps on a couch in some tiny dump in Cambridge." The silence that followed was suffocating. Morrison's eyebrows rose dramatically while Harrison's expression shifted from confusion to deep concern. The other attendees exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their shock at witnessing such an unprofessional outburst during a critical business meeting. Amanda seemed to realize what she'd done, but instead of stopping, she doubled down on her attack. "You don't understand. I know her personally. She's been pretending to run some kind of business for years, but it's all a fantasy. She has no clients, no revenue, no real credentials. This has to be some kind of elaborate fraud." Jennifer Walsh reached for her phone, presumably to call security, while Morrison's face darkened with embarrassment at having one of his associates behave so inappropriately in front of their most valuable client. Amanda's accusations hung in the air like toxic smoke, poisoning the professional atmosphere I'd worked so hard to establish. But instead of defending myself or engaging with Amanda's hysteria, I remained calm and addressed Harrison directly. "Mr. Phillips, it appears there may be a personal conflict of interest that we should address professionally. Would you prefer to continue this presentation at a later time, or should we pause to resolve this disruption?" My composed response seemed to underscore just how unhinged Amanda's behavior appeared to everyone else in the room. Harrison's respect for my professionalism was evident in his expression as he turned toward Morrison with a look that demanded immediate explanation and resolution. "Miss Wellington." Morrison's voice carried decades of authority and barely controlled anger. "Please collect yourself and step outside immediately. We'll discuss this matter privately once this meeting concludes." Amanda's face flushed crimson as she realized she'd just destroyed her credibility in front of the firm's senior partners and their most important client. She tried to backtrack, claiming she was just concerned about potential conflicts of interest and protecting the firm's reputation. But her words sounded desperate and unconvincing after her emotional outburst. As security personnel arrived to escort Amanda from the conference room, she shot me a look filled with hatred and promised that the truth would come out. But her threats rang hollow in a room full of legal professionals who just witnessed her complete loss of composure and professional judgment. The door closed behind Amanda and the boardroom fell silent except for the soft hum of the climate control system. Morrison turned toward me with an expression of profound apology and professional embarrassment that spoke volumes about the firm's commitment to maintaining the highest standards of client service. "Miss Mildred, on behalf of Sullivan and Cromwell, I offer our sincerest apologies for that inexcusable disruption. Miss Wellington's behavior was completely inappropriate and does not reflect our firm's values or professional standards. Please continue with your presentation and know that we'll address this matter internally with the seriousness it deserves." I nodded graciously and resumed my presentation, though the tension in the room had shifted dramatically. The senior partners leaned forward with renewed attention, perhaps eager to demonstrate their commitment to the data-secure partnership after witnessing such unprofessional behavior from one of their own staff members. The remaining hour of my presentation proceeded flawlessly with technical questions that demonstrated genuine interest in implementing DataSecure's platform across Sullivan and Cromwell's client networks. Harrison's confidence in my capabilities seemed strengthened by my composed handling of Amanda's disruption, and Morrison's enthusiasm for the partnership grew with each detailed answer I provided. As the meeting concluded with handshakes and commitments to begin implementation planning immediately, I realized that Amanda's attempt to sabotage my presentation had actually reinforced my credibility and professionalism. Her meltdown had revealed far more about her character than it had about mine, and everyone in that room recognized the difference between genuine competence and desperate jealousy. Amanda excused herself from the remainder of the meeting, claiming sudden illness, but her pale complexion and shaking hands suggested that shock, rather than physical ailment, had overwhelmed her composure. As she gathered the scattered papers from the floor, her movements were jerky and uncoordinated, like someone trying to function while their entire worldview crumbled around them. The presentation continued with renewed energy from Sullivan and Cromwell's team, who seemed eager to demonstrate their professionalism after Amanda's embarrassing outburst. Morrison asked detailed questions about implementation timelines, while Walsh explored technical specifications for integrating DataSecure's platform with their existing document management systems. Harrison's satisfaction with my responses was evident in his increasingly enthusiastic participation in the technical discussions. By 4:30 that afternoon, we'd established a comprehensive integration timeline that would begin with pilot testing on 3 of Sullivan and Cromwell's smaller clients before expanding to cover Whitmore's extensive legal needs. The contract amendments required to formalize this expanded relationship would add another $2 million to DataSecure's revenue projections, transforming what had begun as a cybersecurity consulting business into a major technology partnership with 2 of America's most respected organizations. As I packed my laptop and presentation materials, Morrison approached with a business card and a confidential expression that suggested our conversation would extend beyond technical matters. "Miss Mildred, I hope you'll forgive my directness, but Miss Wellington's behavior this afternoon was completely unacceptable by any professional standard. We'll be conducting a thorough investigation into her conduct and determining appropriate disciplinary measures." I maintained professional neutrality while acknowledging his concerns, though privately, I wondered about the extent of Amanda's previous unprofessional behavior and whether this afternoon's outburst represented an isolated incident or part of a broader pattern. Morrison's immediate response suggested that Amanda's standing within the firm might already be precarious, making today's meltdown potentially career-ending rather than merely embarrassing. The elevator descended toward the lobby while I processed the surreal events of the afternoon. 6 hours earlier, I'd entered this building as an entrepreneur seeking to establish credibility with a prestigious law firm. Now I was leaving as the CEO of a company that would fundamentally change how major corporations protected their most sensitive information, while the woman who'd convinced my family I was an embarrassment had just destroyed her own career in spectacular fashion. My phone buzzed with a text message as I stepped onto the sidewalk outside Sullivan and Cromwell's headquarters. Jason's name appeared on the screen, followed by words that made my stomach clench with dread. "At S&C now. Amanda called me hysterical. Need to see you immediately. Lobby." I turned toward the building's entrance and saw my brother pacing near the security desk, his expensive overcoat buttoned against the January wind and his face flushed with anger that I assumed was directed at me. Jason's presence meant that Amanda had contacted him during her breakdown, probably spinning some version of events that portrayed her as the victim of my supposed deception. The confrontation I'd been dreading for months was about to unfold in the marble-lined lobby of one of Manhattan's most prestigious law firms, surrounded by attorneys and executives who represented the pinnacle of professional achievement. Jason's body language suggested he'd arrived prepared for battle, convinced that I'd somehow manipulated my way into a situation beyond my capabilities. "Mildred," Jason's voice carried across the lobby with enough volume to draw attention from several well-dressed professionals waiting for elevators. "We need to talk right now. Amanda told me what happened up there, and I want to understand exactly how you conned your way into that meeting." The security guard behind the reception desk looked up with interest, while two women in business suits paused their conversation to observe what was clearly becoming a family drama played out in public. I approached Jason, slowly maintaining the same composed demeanor that had served me well during Amanda's boardroom meltdown. "Jason, I'm not sure what Amanda told you, but perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private than Sullivan and Cromwell's lobby." My voice remained calm despite the adrenaline coursing through my system as I prepared for whatever accusations Amanda had prepared him to deliver. But Jason was too angry to consider discretion or appropriate venues for family confrontations. "She said you're pretending to be some kind of CEO, that you somehow tricked these people into believing you have a real company. She's upstairs having a panic attack because she thinks you're about to destroy her career with whatever scam you're running." Before I could respond, the elevator doors opened, and Charles Morrison stepped into the lobby, accompanied by two other senior partners, whose conversation stopped abruptly when they recognized the raised voices coming from our direction. Morrison's expression shifted from professional courtesy to concern as he realized that the family drama unfolding near the security desk involved the CEO of Data Secure Solutions, Miss Mildred. Morrison approached with the diplomatic skills that had made him one of New York's most respected legal minds. "Is everything all right? Do you need assistance with anything?" Jason's face showed confusion as he processed Morrison's deferential tone toward his supposedly fraudulent sister. The senior partner's obvious respect for my position created cognitive dissonance that challenged everything Amanda had told him about my supposed deception. "Mr. Morrison," I replied with professional courtesy, "I'd like you to meet my brother Jason. He's an attorney with Henderson Barrett and Associates in Boston, and he seems to have some concerns about Data Secure's legitimacy that perhaps you could help address." Morrison extended his hand toward Jason with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to managing complex interpersonal situations during high-stakes business negotiations. "Mr. Jason, it's a pleasure to meet you. Your sister has just concluded one of the most impressive cybersecurity presentations our firm has witnessed in recent years. Data Secure's partnership with Whitmore Industries represents exactly the kind of innovative thinking our clients require." Jason shook Morrison's hand mechanically, his expression shifting from anger to confusion as he struggled to reconcile Amanda's version of events with the evidence before his eyes. The senior partner's obvious respect for my professional accomplishments contradicted everything he'd been told about my supposed failure and deception. "I don't understand," Jason stammered, his voice losing the aggressive edge that had carried across the lobby moments earlier. "Amanda said that Mildred was pretending to run a company that she doesn't have any real clients or credentials." Morrison's eyebrows rose slightly as he processed this information, and I realized that Jason was inadvertently revealing the extent of Amanda's unprofessional behavior and personal bias. The senior partner's expression suggested he was beginning to understand the deeper context behind Amanda's boardroom meltdown. "Mr. Jason, I can assure you that your sister's credentials are impeccable. Data Secure Solutions has developed cybersecurity technology that surpasses anything currently available in the market. We've conducted extensive due diligence on both the company and Miss Mildred's background, including verification of her MIT computer science degree, her 3 registered patents, and references from Fortune 500 companies who've successfully implemented her security protocols." The color drained from Jason's face as Morrison continued. "In fact, Miss Wellington's behavior during this afternoon's meeting raised serious questions about her professional judgment and objectivity. Her emotional outburst and personal attacks on your sister were completely inappropriate and potentially damaging to our firm's reputation with one of our most valued clients." Jason stood frozen in the center of the lobby, surrounded by the marble columns and crystal chandeliers that spoke of Sullivan and Cromwell's prestige, as the foundation of his assumptions about his sister crumbled beneath him. Everything Amanda had told him about my supposed failures and embarrassing situation had been not just wrong, but deliberately misleading. "Where is Amanda now?" Jason asked quietly, his voice barely audible above the lobby's ambient conversations and elevator chimes. Morrison's expression became carefully neutral as he delivered information that would change Jason's understanding of his fiancée forever. "Miss Wellington is currently meeting with our Human Resources Director and Senior Disciplinary Committee. Her employment status is under immediate review following this afternoon's unprofessional conduct." The implications of Morrison's words settled over Jason like a cold weight. Amanda hadn't just embarrassed herself during a business meeting. She'd potentially destroyed her career at one of the most prestigious law firms in the country. While attacking the sister, she'd convinced him to reject and exclude from family celebrations. As Morrison excused himself to attend another meeting, Jason and I stood alone in the lobby while the reality of Amanda's manipulation became undeniably clear. The woman he'd planned to marry had systematically undermined his relationship with his sister, while feeding him lies about my professional capabilities and personal situation. Mildred. Jason's voice cracked with emotion as he struggled to process the magnitude of his mistake. "I don't know what to say. I thought I was protecting my career by listening to Amanda's advice about keeping distance from your struggles. I had no idea that you were building something this significant or that she was lying to me about everything." The apology I'd longed to hear for months finally came, but it arrived accompanied by the devastating realization that my brother had chosen social status and professional advancement over family loyalty, based on the manipulative lies of a woman who just destroyed her own career through jealousy and unprofessional behavior. Morrison returned to the lobby 20 minutes later, his expression grave, as he approached Jason and me near the reception area, where we'd been quietly discussing the implications of Amanda's deception. The senior partner's body language suggested he carried news that would fundamentally alter our understanding of the afternoon's events and Amanda's behavior over the past several months. "Miss Mildred, Mr. Jason, would you please join me in my office for a private conversation? There are matters regarding Miss Wellington's conduct that extend beyond this afternoon's incident, and I believe you both deserve to understand the full scope of what we've discovered during our preliminary investigation." We followed Morrison into an elevator that carried us to the 39th floor, where his corner office commanded breathtaking views of Manhattan's skyline. The space reflected decades of successful legal practice, leather-bound books, prestigious awards and photographs with political figures and business leaders who'd shaped American corporate law. Morrison gestured toward 2 chairs facing his desk, while he settled into the executive chair that had witnessed countless crucial decisions during his illustrious career. "Before we begin," Morrison said, reaching for a digital recorder on his desk, "I need to inform you that this conversation may be relevant to our firm's disciplinary proceedings regarding Miss Wellington. With your permission, I'd like to record our discussion to ensure accuracy in our internal investigation." I agreed immediately while Jason nodded reluctantly, still processing the revelation that his fiancée's behavior had triggered a formal investigation at one of America's most respected law firms. Morrison activated the recording device and stated the date, time, and participants for the record before beginning what would become the most revealing conversation of our lives. "Miss Mildred, during our review of Miss Wellington's recent case files and client interactions, we discovered several instances of concerning behavior that preceded this afternoon's outburst. Would you be willing to share any relevant communications or interactions you've had with Miss Wellington that might help us understand the context of her unprofessional conduct?" I reached into my briefcase and withdrew a manila folder containing printed copies of text messages, emails, and transcripts of recorded phone conversations I'd been collecting for the past 2 months. Morrison's eyes widened as I explained my decision to document Amanda's increasingly inappropriate attempts to interfere with my business relationships and family connections. Following advice from my attorney regarding potential harassment issues, I've been legally recording phone conversations with proper notification and saving all written communications that seem designed to undermine my professional credibility or personal relationships. Amanda has been systematically attempting to sabotage my business development efforts while manipulating my family's perception of my capabilities and achievements. Jason leaned forward as I displayed copies of text messages Amanda had sent to potential data-secure clients, claiming to represent my family's concerns about my company's reliability and financial stability. In one particularly damaging message to a Boston healthcare network considering my services, Amanda had identified herself as someone close to the CEO and suggested they conduct additional background checks due to concerning personal financial issues. Morrison examined each document with the methodical attention to detail that had made him one of New York's most respected legal minds. His expression grew increasingly serious as he reviewed Amanda's attempts to contact DataSecure's potential investors, warning them about ethical concerns and questionable business practices without providing any specific evidence to support her allegations. But the most devastating revelation came when I presented transcripts of 3 recorded phone conversations where Amanda had explicitly discussed her strategy for undermining my relationships with family members. In a November conversation with her colleague Sarah Kim from Sullivan and Cromwell's corporate department, Amanda had described her plan to convince Jason and our parents that my business ventures represented an embarrassing liability that could damage his partnership prospects. The key is making them understand that having an unsuccessful entrepreneur sister reflects poorly on Jason's judgment and family background. Amanda's voice was clearly audible on the recording I played for Morrison and Jason. I've been subtly suggesting that her presence at professional events could be problematic for his career advancement, and his parents are starting to agree that some distance might be beneficial for everyone involved. Jason's face went ashen as he listened to Amanda discussing our family like chess pieces in her personal strategy game. The recording continued with Amanda explaining how she'd researched DataSecure's early financial struggles and used selective information to paint a picture of failure and irresponsibility that convinced our parents to support excluding me from family gatherings. Morrison paused the recording and turned toward Jason with an expression combining professional concern and personal sympathy. Mr. Jason, I need you to understand that Miss Wellington's behavior represents serious ethical violations that extend far beyond today's boardroom incident. Her attempts to interfere with DataSecure's business relationships and manipulate your family dynamics demonstrate a pattern of unprofessional conduct that we simply cannot tolerate. The senior partner continued, Furthermore, our investigation has revealed that Miss Wellington has been under performance review for the past 4 months due to complaints from 3 different clients about her attitude, poor judgment, and inappropriate personal comments during professional meetings. Today's outburst was not an isolated incident, but rather the culmination of ongoing behavioral problems that we've been monitoring with increasing concern. Jason sat in stunned silence as Morrison explained that Amanda's employment with Sullivan and Cromwell was being terminated immediately effective as of 5 o'clock that afternoon. Her security access had been revoked, her office was being cleaned out by support staff, and she would be escorted from the building once she finished meeting with Human Resources about final administrative matters. The irony, Morrison observed with dry legal precision, is that Miss Wellington's attempts to sabotage your sister's professional reputation have resulted in the destruction of her own career, while DataSecure's partnership with Whitmore Industries represents one of the most significant technology integrations our firm has facilitated this year. I felt no satisfaction in Amanda's downfall, only sadness at the unnecessary destruction her jealousy and manipulation had created. Her behavior had damaged relationships that might have flourished if she'd approached my success with support rather than sabotage, and her career had ended not because of any external conspiracy, but because of her own poor choices and unprofessional conduct. Jason finally spoke, his voice hollow with the realization of how thoroughly he'd been manipulated. "Mildred, I don't know how to apologize for choosing Amanda's lies over my own sister's integrity. I let her convince me that supporting your dreams was somehow disloyal to our family's expectations, and I participated in excluding you from our lives based on deliberate deceptions designed to advance her personal agenda." Morrison offered Jason a business card for Sullivan and Cromwell's family counseling referral service, suggesting that professional guidance might help us navigate the complex process of rebuilding trust and repairing relationships damaged by Amanda's systematic manipulation. The senior partner's recommendation carried the weight of someone who'd witnessed countless families struggle with the aftermath of betrayal and deception. As our meeting concluded, Morrison walked us to the elevator with a final observation that would stay with me for months afterward. "Miss Mildred, your professional integrity and personal dignity throughout this difficult situation demonstrate exactly the kind of character our firm values in business partners. DataSecure's success is clearly built on the same foundation of excellence that will ensure this partnership benefits both our organizations for years to come." The elevator descended toward the lobby while Jason and I processed the magnitude of what we'd learned about Amanda's deception and its impact on our family relationships. 3 hours earlier, Jason had arrived at Sullivan and Cromwell convinced that I was running some kind of elaborate fraud. Now he was leaving with the knowledge that his fiancée had systematically destroyed her career while attempting to sabotage mine, and that our family's rejection of my achievements had been based entirely on malicious lies designed to serve Amanda's personal insecurities and professional jealousy. News of DataSecure's partnership with Whitmore Industries spread through Boston's business community with remarkable speed. By January 8th, the Boston Business Journal had published a featured article titled "Local Tech Entrepreneur Lands Multi-Million-Dollar Cybersecurity Contract," complete with a photograph of me standing in front of our Kendall Square office building and quotes from Harrison Phillips praising DataSecure's innovative approach to predictive security protocols. The article's online version generated hundreds of shares across social media platforms, reaching far beyond Boston's technology circles, to include friends, family members, and acquaintances who'd witnessed my struggles during the lean years of building the company. Comments poured in from former MIT classmates expressing surprise and admiration for DataSecure's rapid rise to prominence in the competitive cybersecurity industry. Dorothy and Frank discovered the article through a Facebook share from their neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, who'd added her own comment, "Isn't this your daughter, Mildred? What an amazing accomplishment." The notification appeared on Mom's phone during their Tuesday morning coffee routine, interrupting their discussion of Jason's sudden breakup with Amanda to deliver news that would fundamentally alter their understanding of their younger child's professional trajectory. By noon that same day, both my parents had driven from their Brookline home to DataSecure's office in Kendall Square, arriving unannounced with a bouquet of roses and expressions of bewildered pride that attempted to mask months of doubt and criticism. The receptionist buzzed my office to announce their arrival, and I felt my stomach clench with the familiar anxiety that accompanied any interaction with family members who'd spent years questioning my judgment and life choices. I found them standing in our modest lobby, looking somewhat out of place among the whiteboards covered with complex algorithms and the casual atmosphere of a technology startup, where brilliant minds worked in jeans and hoodies rather than traditional business attire. Mom's eyes were bright with unshed tears, while Dad clutched the roses awkwardly and struggled to find words that could bridge the gap between their previous dismissal and their current attempt at celebration. "Mildred's sweetheart." Mom began, her voice wavering with emotion. "We had no idea about the scope of what you've been building here. The newspaper article says your company is worth millions of dollars and that you're working with some of the biggest corporations in America. Why didn't you tell us about these achievements?" The question hung in the air between us while I considered how to respond with honesty that wouldn't unnecessarily wound parents whose love had always been conditional on their understanding of success and respectability. Their presence in my office represented both an opportunity for reconciliation and a moment of reckoning with years of accumulated disappointment and family dysfunction. "Mom, Dad." I replied carefully, "I tried to share my progress with you many times over the past 3 years, but every conversation about Data Secure was met with suggestions that I abandon this work in favor of traditional employment. When I mentioned potential clients or technological breakthroughs, you responded with concern about my financial stability and advice about finding real jobs with established companies." Frank shifted uncomfortably, his memory clearly providing examples of conversations where he'd expressed exactly the kind of skepticism I was describing. "We were worried about you, honey, living in that tiny apartment, working such long hours, never seeming to have enough money for basic necessities. We thought we were being responsible parents by encouraging more stable career choices." Dorothy added, "And Amanda seemed so knowledgeable about business matters. When she expressed concerns about entrepreneurship being risky and impractical, we thought she was helping us understand why you were struggling to achieve the kind of security that Jason had found in his legal career." The mention of Amanda's influence on their perception brought me to the most difficult part of our conversation. I explained how Amanda had systematically undermined their confidence in my capabilities while positioning herself as the voice of practical wisdom and family concern. Their faces showed shock and embarrassment as I detailed Amanda's manipulation tactics and the extent of her attempts to isolate me from family support during the most challenging period of building Data Secure. "She convinced you that my presence at family gatherings would embarrass Jason professionally." I continued, while simultaneously contacting my potential clients and investors to plant seeds of doubt about Data Secure's reliability and my personal character. Her goal was to ensure my failure while positioning herself as the family member who'd protected Jason from association with that failure. Dorothy sank into one of the lobby chairs, her face pale with the realization of how completely she'd been manipulated by someone she'd welcomed and trusted. "Mildred, we thought we were supporting Jason's career prospects by being realistic about the challenges you were facing. Amanda made it seem like unconditional family support would actually harm your chances of recognizing when it was time to pivot toward more practical alternatives." Frank's anger was more immediate and vocal. "That woman played us like fools, turning us against our own daughter while pretending to have everyone's best interests at heart. And we fell for it, completely questioning your judgment when we should have been questioning hers." I felt a mixture of vindication and sadness as my parents processed the magnitude of Amanda's deception. Their good intentions had been weaponized against me by someone who understood exactly how to exploit their natural parental concerns about my unconventional career path and financial struggles. But the conversation took an unexpected turn when I revealed my decision about Data Secure's future expansion plans. The success of our Whitmore partnership has generated opportunities for Data Secure to expand nationally. We've been offered a position on the board of directors for the National Technology Innovation Foundation, which would require relocating our headquarters to Silicon Valley and establishing a West Coast presence. Dorothy's expression shifted to panic as she processed the implications of my announcement. "You're thinking about moving to California, leaving Boston permanently." I explained that the opportunity represented a chance to transform Data Secure from a regional cybersecurity firm into a national technology leader, but that accepting would mean leaving behind everything familiar for the uncertainty of building a new life 3,000 miles from family and established relationships. The foundation board position comes with significant funding for research and development, plus connections to venture capital firms that could fuel Data Secure's expansion into artificial intelligence and machine learning applications. But it would also mean starting over in a new city where I don't have the support networks I've built here in Boston. Frank leaned forward with desperate intensity. "Mildred, please don't make any major decisions without giving us a chance to repair the damage Amanda caused to our family. We know we failed you when you needed support most, but we want the opportunity to prove that we can be the parents you deserve." "Ooh." Their plea for another chance touched something deep in my heart that months of rejection and criticism had nearly destroyed. But I also recognized that rebuilding trust would require more than apologies and flower bouquets. It would demand fundamental changes in how our family communicated about success failure and the different paths people might choose in pursuing meaningful lives. I'm not making any immediate decisions about California, I assured them. But I need you both to understand that our relationship going forward will need to be based on respect for my choices and confidence in my judgment, even when my path doesn't match your expectations or Amanda's definition of appropriate career progression. As our conversation continued, Jason arrived at the office looking haggard from sleepless nights, spent processing the destruction of his relationship with Amanda and the damage his choices had caused to his relationship with me. His presence completed our family circle for the first time in months, but the gaps in trust and understanding would require time and consistent effort to bridge. The afternoon ended with tentative agreements about better communication, family boundaries that respected individual choices, and a commitment to rebuilding relationships based on love rather than conditional approval. But beneath the surface, reconciliation laid deeper questions about whether our family could truly change patterns that had been decades in the making. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon warmed by unseasonable January temperatures that reached 48 degrees Fahrenheit, I hosted a small dinner party at my new downtown loft apartment overlooking Boston Harbor. The space represented more than just a change of address. It symbolized DataSecure's transformation from struggling startup to established technology company, and my own evolution from someone seeking family approval to someone confident in her own worth and achievements. The guest list was carefully curated to include only people who'd supported my journey or were committed to rebuilding damaged relationships through consistent actions rather than empty promises. Sarah Chen and Marcus Rodriguez arrived first carrying champagne to celebrate DataSecure's recent expansion into a full floor of office space in Kendall Square, complete with dedicated research laboratories and conference facilities that would support our growing team of cybersecurity specialists. Jason appeared at 7 o'clock punctual for the first time in months and carrying a handwritten letter he'd spent days crafting to express thoughts too complex for casual conversation. His appearance had changed dramatically since Amanda's departure from his life. The confident arrogance that had characterized his behavior during their relationship had been replaced by humility and genuine remorse for choices that had nearly cost him his relationship with his sister permanently. "Mildred," he said, extending the sealed envelope with hands that trembled slightly, "I've written down everything I wanted to say about these past months, but the most important message is that I'm committed to earning back your trust through actions rather than words. I know that rebuilding our relationship will take time, and I'm prepared to invest however long that process requires." I accepted his letter with appreciation for the effort it represented, though privately I remained cautious about the sustainability of his transformation. Years of family dysfunction couldn't be resolved through single gestures. However, heartfelt and true change would need to be demonstrated through consistent behavior over extended periods. Dorothy and Frank arrived 15 minutes later carrying a homemade apple pie that represented Mom's attempt to contribute something personal to an evening where purchased gifts would have felt inadequate to the emotional significance of family reconciliation. Their body language showed continued discomfort with the modern loft's open floor plan and contemporary furnishings, but their presence demonstrated willingness to engage with my world on its own terms, rather than demanding conformity to their traditional expectations. During dinner, our conversation naturally evolved beyond apologies and recriminations toward discussions of DataSecure's future plans and the technological innovations that would define cybersecurity industry development over the coming decade. I explained how our partnership with Whitmore Industries had opened doors to collaboration opportunities with pharmaceutical companies, biotechnology firms, and medical research institutions that required unprecedented levels of data protection. The foundation board position in California, I announced, has been restructured to allow remote participation for the first 2 years, which means Data Secure can establish a West Coast presence gradually while maintaining our Boston headquarters and the relationships that have been crucial to our success. Jason's visible relief at this news revealed how seriously he'd been considering the possibility of losing his sister permanently due to his poor choices during Amanda's influence over our family dynamics. Dorothy and Frank exchanged glances that spoke of gratitude for avoiding consequences that would have been entirely deserved but devastatingly permanent. The evening's most significant moment came when I shared Data Secure's decision to establish a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs who faced family skepticism or social pressure to abandon innovative projects in favor of traditional career paths. The program would provide both financial support and emotional guidance for people navigating the isolation that often accompanies unconventional professional choices. Too many brilliant minds abandon revolutionary ideas because they lack support systems that encourage persistence through difficult periods, I explained. Data Secure's success creates opportunities to help other innovators weather the storms of family doubt and social criticism that nearly derailed my own journey toward meaningful achievement. Sarah Chen added her perspective as someone who'd left corporate security to join Data Secure during its uncertain early stages. The most difficult aspect of entrepreneurship isn't technical challenges or financial pressure. It's maintaining confidence in your vision when people you love and respect question your judgment every day. Marcus Rodriguez nodded in agreement, sharing his own experience of family members who'd criticized his decision to leave government employment for the uncertain world of startup technology development. Success feels empty when achieved in isolation, from people whose approval you've always valued, but conditional support based on predetermined definitions of respectability isn't really support at all. As the evening progressed, Jason began asking thoughtful questions about cybersecurity applications in legal practice, demonstrating genuine interest in understanding my work rather than simply offering superficial praise designed to repair our relationship. His questions revealed that he'd been researching Data Secure's technology, independently preparing for conversations that showed respect for my expertise and professional accomplishments. Dorothy surprised everyone by asking whether Data Secure's mentorship program might benefit from volunteer support from people who'd learned hard lessons about the importance of believing in family members' capabilities, even when their paths seemed uncertain or unconventional. Maybe parents like your father and me could help other families avoid the mistakes we made by sharing our experience of how quickly doubt can damage relationships that should be sources of strength. Her suggestion touched something deep in my heart that months of anger and disappointment had nearly buried. The opportunity to transform our family's painful experience into something that could help other families avoid similar mistakes offered a path toward healing that honored both our shared hurt and our continuing love for each other. The evening concluded with tentative but genuine agreements about future family gatherings that would celebrate individual achievements rather than demanding conformity to predetermined expectations. Jason committed to attending Data Secure's upcoming technology demonstration for potential investors, while Dorothy and Frank volunteered to help with the mentorship program's family education component. As my guests prepared to leave, I realized that Amanda's attempt to destroy my relationships had ultimately forced all of us to confront unhealthy patterns that had been damaging our family dynamics for years. Her manipulation had been destructive, but it had also created opportunities for growth that might never have emerged without the crisis she precipitated. Jason lingered after our parents departed, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of Boston Harbor's twinkling lights. Mildred, I keep thinking about how different things might have been if I'd supported your dreams instead of listening to Amanda's fears and insecurities. You built something amazing while dealing with criticism and doubt that should have been encouragement and celebration. I joined him at the window, watching ferries navigate between harbor islands that represented their own forms of isolation and connection. Jason, the past can't be changed, but we can choose how we move forward from here. Data Secure success feels meaningful because it proves that persistence and innovation can overcome even the most discouraging circumstances, including family dysfunction. 2 weeks later, I received a handwritten apology letter from Amanda forwarded through Morrison's office, with a note indicating she'd requested his assistance in communicating her remorse for the damage her behavior had caused to both my professional reputation and our family relationships. The letter was articulate and appeared genuinely contrite, acknowledging specific examples of her manipulation and expressing understanding of how her actions had nearly destroyed relationships she claimed to value. I read Amanda's letter twice before filing it away without responding, choosing to focus my emotional energy on building positive relationships with people who supported my authentic self, rather than attempting to rehabilitate connections poisoned by jealousy and deception. Some bridges once burned are better left unrepaired in favor of constructing entirely new pathways toward happiness and fulfillment. Data Secure's first quarterly board meeting took place in our expanded conference room, with Harrison Phillips participating via video conference from Whitmore's North Carolina headquarters and Morrison joining from Sullivan and Cromwell's New York offices. The partnership that had begun as a cybersecurity consulting contract had evolved into a comprehensive technology collaboration that would influence industry standards for protecting intellectual property and sensitive research data. During the meeting's closing remarks, Harrison offered an observation that captured the deeper significance of Data Secure's journey. Miss Mildred's success represents more than just technological innovation. It demonstrates how individual persistence and family support can combine to create solutions that benefit entire industries and protect millions of people's personal information. His words reminded me that true success isn't measured only in financial terms or professional recognition, but also in the positive impact our work has on other people's lives and the relationships that sustain us through difficult periods. Data Secure's cybersecurity platform would protect countless individuals' sensitive information, while our family's painful experience with manipulation and conditional love had taught us valuable lessons about the importance of supporting each other's dreams, even when we don't fully understand them. 6 months after Amanda's meltdown in Sullivan and Cromwell's boardroom, Jason and I attended our first family celebration together in nearly a year. Dorothy's 72nd birthday party took place in our parents' backyard, where paper lanterns illuminated tables filled with relatives who'd heard about Data Secure's success through family networks and business publications. The conversations that evening focused on achievements, aspirations, and mutual support, rather than criticism, doubt, and conditional approval. Cousins asked thoughtful questions about cybersecurity applications in their own professional fields, while aunts and uncles expressed pride in having a technology entrepreneur in the family who was helping protect America's most important research and development efforts. As the evening wound down and guests began departing, I found myself standing with Jason on the back porch, where we'd spent countless childhood hours discussing dreams and possibilities that had seemed limitless before adult responsibilities and social expectations began narrowing our vision of what success could look like. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd supported your startup from the beginning, instead of letting Amanda convince me to doubt your capabilities? Jason asked, his voice carrying regret that would probably never completely fade. I considered his question while watching fireflies dance among the rose bushes Mom had planted years ago as symbols of beauty that persisted through changing seasons and unpredictable weather. I think everything happened exactly as it needed to happen, Jason. The struggle and doubt made Data Secure stronger, and our family's crisis forced all of us to grow in ways that might never have occurred if success had come easily. The truth was that Amanda's manipulation and our family's conditional support had taught me lessons about resilience, self-reliance, and authentic relationships that no amount of early encouragement could have provided. Building data secure while facing criticism and exclusion had required developing inner strength that would serve me well throughout whatever challenges lay ahead in the rapidly evolving technology industry. Now, as I prepare to share this story with you, I'm reminded that success often emerges from our ability to persist through periods when the people we love most don't believe in our dreams. Family relationships can be complicated and painful, but they can also be transformed through honest communication, consistent support, and willingness to admit mistakes and commit to better choices moving forward. Have you ever faced a situation where family members doubted your dreams or tried to convince you to abandon goals that didn't match their definition of success? How did you handle the choice between seeking approval and staying true to your vision of what your life could become? I'd love to hear your experiences and thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my story about building data secure and rebuilding family relationships after betrayal and manipulation nearly destroyed both. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video, subscribing to support more stories about overcoming challenges and achieving dreams, and sharing with anyone who might benefit from hearing about persistence, family dynamics, and the importance of believing in yourself even when others don't. Remember that your dreams are valid regardless of whether other people understand or support them, and that true success includes building relationships based on love, respect, and mutual encouragement rather than conditional approval and predetermined expectations. Wishing you courage, persistence, and the support you deserve as you pursue whatever goals matter most to your authentic self.